BTOOOM is an anime that I really used to love. One of the first Battle Royale-esque anime I watched after Fate Zero, and the first anime I ever watched with my brother. Speaking of which, wish that man a happy birthday. Setting apart my emotional attachment to the show and viewing it on its own, the question remains though, did BTOOOM start out well? Well, the episode begins with a guy checking his arm gauntlet before running away and getting blown up by a dude in red, saying it's his third kill. After utilizing a sonar ping, Red Team blows up a civilian, mistaking it for an enemy. As they stand out in the open, a third member of Red Team appears, telling them they suck before taking out the last member of the opposite team and giving them the win, revealing it to be a game that whoever our main character is, he seems to be really good at. After a good OP that I've remembered for years and didn't even realize, it's revealed that our MC has 20 straight wins and is number 10 in the entire world before he gets challenged by number 2. Finally we learn what the game is, BTOOOM. In this game you don't use guns but bombs instead, calling them BIMs, of which you only get 8, using Sonar to track down your enemies while remaining out of sight, winning the game when the other team is eliminated. As our MC plays against number 2, he's able to keep up, showcasing his skill even against opponents seemingly better than him. As we learn more about him, he's 22 and has never had a job, but in BTOOOM and the virtual world of the game, he garners respect, even being married in said world, content with his virtual life as he runs away from his real one, making him out to be antisocial or introverted to some degree, not caring about maintaining in-person relationships or dedicating time to his real life. Unless he's making money from BTOOOM, it's safe to assume he's being taken care of by someone else, since he'll need money to get the essentials. Most likely a parent if I had to make a guess. A time skip happens and he's dangling from a tree, caught by a parachute that he apparently used to get down from the sky, not remembering why he is there nor where he even is, possibly setting it up to be against his will and related to the game he's dedicated his life to. Last thing he remembers is playing the game as we saw earlier, so this had to have happened on the same day as he was challenged by number 2. Whether or not it has significance I can't say for sure, but it's worth bringing up regardless. After touching his head, it's revealed that he's bleeding, with the wound another possibility for his memory loss if the amnesia is not caused by another person. He checks his phone with it having no service, showing that he's far enough off the grid that getting help may be unlikely. It also demonstrates that if he was brought there by a person, then they are confident enough in that fact that they didn't even bother to confiscate his phone. Either that or they left it in his possession to help him, which it is I can't be sure. Seeing a jewel implanted into his hand, he starts to freak out, noticing that it's glass and it feels like a natural part of his body. It being glass proves it to be man-made and not something he ended up growing somehow, furthering the idea that he's been kidnapped and put into this situation, along with the line,
I haven't been kidnapped by a UFO or anything, have I?
Hearing loud jungle noises, he takes steps back, bumping into a bag that he recognizes as his own, finding his wallet inside, along with a change of clothes, a bag he doesn't recognize, a boxed lunch, and a drink. Although the items could have been taken from his room by someone else, or just be duplicates of items he already knows, his recognition of them does kinda further an idea that he may have put himself in this situation and doesn't remember due to the wound on his head. That being said, the bag he doesn't recognize among his items, as well as the fact that he couldn't implant a glass thing into his hand himself, could also mean that whoever did kidnap him, if he was indeed kidnapped, gives him things to help him survive because for some reason or another they need him to do so. After walking through the jungle, he uses the extreme heat to assume that he's somewhere in the south, drinking more of his bottle before wisely deciding that he should try and save the rest, showing showing that regardless of his lack of real-world skills, his survival skills that he could have gained from the game aren't entirely lost on him. After encounters with bugs he's not familiar with, a spider causes him to run away, showcasing his sheltered nature while also his want for survival. Since any one of those insects or arachnids could have some kind of poison, avoiding them was probably the smart thing to do for now. Although if he came here of his own volition, you'd think he'd have some knowledge of the wildlife inhabiting it, which could be explained away by the amnesia, but since it seems to be short-term memory loss, I'm not so sure. He runs until he stumbles onto a beach, the hopelessness of the situation finally showing through as he screams us into the next scene. Here he's yelling at his mom for writing a resume behind his back and sending it to a grocery store, a place that he refuses to work, saying he already has a job that he wants, with my best guess being that he wants to be a pro BTOOOM player, although that existing as a job isn't something that has been brought up thus far. It's just as possible that he was lying about having a job in mind, and that his mother, who I assumed earlier takes care of him, is at her wit's end, possibly represented by the face she makes here. Once he walks outside to go to a friend's out of anger, he is approached by two guys asking him to verify who he is, the son of his mother. These could be the guys that kidnapped him and dropped him onto this island, and given they bring up his mother by name, it could have some relation to her. Either she owes them and he's getting the punishment for it, possibly due to her borrowing money in order to keep food on the table for them since no dad has been shown to be in the picture, or she has grown so tired of him that she contacted these men to get rid of him for her, this one being far more extreme and going against her writing the resume that was brought up earlier, since if she had a hand in it then she wouldn't have needed to put the work in to try and get him a job. The face she made could have been one of recognition however, and she could have knew what was about to take place, with him not taking the job to have been a test for what ended up being the very last straw. It's also possible that she only did this to have an alibi. She had to have went to the grocery store and filled out the resume, and just as I assumed, it would be reasonable for the police to assume that she wouldn't have done that if she had the intention of getting rid of her kid. As he sits on the beach remembering that moment, one thing sticks with him most: his mother's face. With the lunch and drink gone, he stupidly didn't make either last, and from now on has to find a new way to get what he needs to survive. Opening the mystery pouch, he sees squares inside, activating a timer with the press of a button. Getting a bad feeling, he tosses it away, avoiding an explosion. Giving his dedication to the game about bombs, his possible addiction, you'd think that he would recognize the ones in his possession, since they are most likely modeled after them due to the game's popularity and its importance to both his life and the lives of others. His bad feeling could have been attributed to his experience with the game, as well as the significance of a 10-second cook timer, but it feels weird that it took him so long to figure that out. With their inclusion, it's safe to assume that there are others on the island as well, with bombs just like his, with the 8 bombs he has being the same number as the game, further supporting the idea of their relation. The explosion caused a massive fire, and with that smoke, having the possibility of giving away his position and attracting other survivors with unknown intentions. Since he was on a beach, it would have made more sense to throw it towards the water, but given he threw it out of desperation, him not thinking of that can't really be helped. It is understandable. He questions why he even has the bombs, saying he wants nothing to do with them and leaving them on the ground, which again should go against his instincts given how he correlates his life to the game, but since he's still a normal person, it does make sense in that regard, even if it doesn't necessarily do the same with his characterization as a whole. As the sun goes down, a person approaches, with him calling out to them in response, probably attracted by the explosion and the damage that it caused, but given that he has bombs himself, it'd be smart to assume the others around him would as well, something he never takes into consideration. The man throws something his direction, exploding on impact, sending MC flying backwards. Finally realizing that this is just like the game. Took ya long enough, hotshot. As he runs away, he smartly grabs the bombs, realizing he's supposed to play the game for real. If it keeps going alongside how the game works, he should have teammates as well, but how they would distinguish one another, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it has something to do with the glass in his hand, acting as a sort of a team collar, or maybe as some kind of sonar ping depending on how it reflects the light that it hits. There's not enough evidence to say for sure. Blondie says that our MC can't run, calling him a piece of crap as he tries to blow him up. Once MC thinks he's hidden, he's found, furthering the idea that there has to be some kind of sonar-like capability, just as the game was shown to have. MC says he may have to fight back, but doesn't like the idea of taking the man's life, even if it means protecting his own. A fair thought process to have if you've never been put in a life or death scenario before. Blondie doesn't understand why he isn't fighting back, wondering if he has a purist mentality, recognizing such as crap. It's safe to assume Blonde Bob has either had similar ideas at one point or encountered others that have, and if it's the latter, it's safe to assume that he's eliminated them, making him an even bigger threat based on his mindset as well as his actions. MC throws a bomb his direction but forgets to hit the timer button, even though he learned to do so already in the episode. Although this feels like already treaded ground, given the adrenaline of the situation, it does make sense for mistakes to be made. He's now down to 6 bombs, and it's only the first episode. Homie better be more careful about the mistakes that he's willing to make. I can assume at this rate, to keep the action high, we'll be looting the bombs off of other people as the show goes on. Either that, or have creative ways to take people out without them, which would have been foreshadowed at the beginning with the melee attack during the finale of the match. Blondie drops off to MC's level, saying that he has a good arm and that he should put some distance between them. In response, MC throws another bomb, activating the timer but not timing his throw, causing it to explode in the water after a great deal of time has passed. Cooking them should be something that he's familiar with from the game that he is good at. You can't tell me homie made it to 10th in the world without ever learning to time his explosives, setting him up as an expert at the game just for him to make rookie mistakes on repeat was a pretty goofy decision, I do have to say. MC smartly sees Blondie headed his way and gets around him, threatening him from behind. He questions Blondie about the bombs, the crystal, and BTOOOM, causing Blondie to laugh and call him dumb, which I'ma be honest, he definitely deserves. Some of his mistakes I can defend, but when every action he makes is one, it makes it really hard to support him, especially again, since he has done this like second nature in a game to the point of being practically unstoppable. Some of that knowledge should have carried over in some regard, but alas, it has not. Blondie, realizing the ineptitude of his opponent, throws a bomb by his head that he barely reacts to in time to dodge without losing his life. His good reaction time could be associated with his time with the game, and his flight or fight response being primarily flight, which we saw represented with the spider from earlier. Homie questions why a random everyday guy would kill him, then decides he wouldn't and tries to surrender, getting him blown backwards in the process. The guy's tried to kill you numerous times now, with you never truly being a threat to him, especially at the beginning on the beach. What kind of idiot would think surrendering would have any effect on him? I remember I used to like this show, but with a main character this dumb, it's hard for me to feel the same all these years later. As Slim Shady looks for him, he thinks about how he doesn't want to die, which is in line with his actions thus far. Then his crystal starts to glow, with him equating it to a sonar, finally using his knowledge of the game to make informed decisions and inform us on what the crystal truly is, which was one of my guesses, a sonar ping. Some character development, I like it, with it seemingly only glowing once the guy gets close. Joffrey throws a bomb, missing our MC, but he's sure that he's close due to the sonar as well. MC finally takes the timer as a timer into consideration, beating himself up, rightfully so, for not noticing that a timer works as a timer far earlier. He says that Spike's bombs are called crackers and explode on impact, and that his work with timers exploding once the timer is over, still using his knowledge of the game to make decisions. Although if he knows them that specifically, it's still pretty silly that it took him this long. After being unable to find Lieutenant Surge, he gets scared and freezes, the worst outcome in terms of flight or fight. I don't know, frickin' Johnny Test or something says he thinks MC is in the cracks, but is aware that if he's in the bushes, he can blow him up from behind. So he smartly decides to throw bombs in both places, really hoping that he hits his target. Given the large areas, it's very possible that he will miss regardless, but this one, he has the chance of staying alive whether he eliminates his opponent or not. MC decides to charge off the cliff into the water, with Finn chasing him to the side, saying he'll wait for him to come up for air and blow him sky high. Knowing that would be the outcome, due to the man's relentless pursuit of him thus far, MC smartly drops a bomb in a crack at the edge, and once the timer hits 0, kills off his pursuer. He watches as his body floats in pieces to the bottom of the sea, making him sick when back on land, as he tells himself he had no choice to justify his actions, although it does still cause him to cry over the life that he took. The episode ends with him seeing the blonde's bombs laying on the beach, taking them to survive in this battle of life or death. So, did BTOOOM start out well? It's hard to say. Stakes were artificially created by dumbing down the character to extremely stupid levels, hurting his characterization in the process, since it goes against the knowledge and skills he'd have possessed in order to make it as far as he has in BTOOOM. Some of those decisions could be justified due to the situation he was put in, the stimulation that it cost, and the amnesia he experienced, but what he forgot was after he played the game, with the game itself being his last memory until he arrives on the beach and then starts to remember more. Him not knowing basic things like how timers work, especially after experiencing the timer in action already, really felt cheap and hurt the tension, since he was made to be stupid in that moment for plot convenience, even at the cost of who he is as a person and the world building set up by the importance of the game in the lives of millions. He's also not very memorable of a character himself, with his name literally never being spoken as far as I can remember. He's just a basic gamer lacking in common sense who contributed little to the world when he was a part of it, and has little redeeming qualities now that he no longer is. He wants to survive, but nothing he said or done makes me care if he does, leaving him not very engaging for me once it's all said and done. This can easily be corrected in future episodes though, but for a first impression, he himself doesn't make me want to come back for more. Thankfully, the idea around the show itself does, with a Battle Royale type game involving bombs of varying types, having the possibility to have some very clever usages that could keep things rather interesting if implemented well. The best example of this is with the last move of the episode, putting the timer bomb on the ground, giving you time to escape and the enemy time to approach. If we see more moves like that, as well as more intelligence by MC in general, then I can definitely see the show improving in the future. The mystery of what happened with many different avenues in terms of possibilities also helps the show out in spades, although I do wish we left him being stopped by those guys until future episodes to keep the mystery aspect a little stronger. It wasn't too revealing, so I still believe that it was handled rather well. It's just not exactly how I would have handled it myself. As first episodes go, it wasn't horrible, but I struggle to call it good, or even average. It works, but definitely calls for lowered expectations for the rest of the show, and doesn't bring anything too new to the table. Nothing that would cause me to recommend this in a sea of other Battle Royale-esque anime, which is a shame given how much I remember liking the show so many years ago, but given it's the first anime I ever watched with my brother, I may have been a little bit biased by that idea. If you want me to cover more episodes, likes, comments, shares, and subscribes, let me know that. If there's something else you want me to cover the first episode of that I haven't already covered on my channel, let me know in the comments below, and for more news, reviews, and whatever we choose, stay tuned to Nerdsfeed. Have a great day, thank you.